Some stories do not announce themselves. They arrive quietly the way real moments do when no one is watching and nothing is staged. This is one of those moments. Keanu Reeves was standing just off the edge of a crowded film set, hands in his coat pockets, eyes lowered as if he were trying to disappear into the noise around him. The lights were bright, the crew was rushed, and everyone seemed to be moving with purpose except one young assistant who stood frozen near a tangled mess of cables. Her face was tight with panic. One wrong step and the entire shoot could shut down. Worse, someone could get hurt. No one noticed her. Everyone was focused on schedules, egos, and urgency. Keanu noticed. He did not raise his voice. He did not wave for attention or call for help. He simply walked over and knelt beside her as if the chaos around them did not exist. In a calm, steady tone, he asked if she was okay. That simple question broke the tension she had been holding inside. Her hands were shaking. She whispered that she was new, that she was scared of messing up, that she felt invisible. Keanu listened without interrupting. He stayed there eye level with her, giving her the dignity of being heard. Then he helped her untangle the cables himself, slowly and carefully, while the world rushed past them. When it was done, he thanked her for being brave enough to show up and try. No cameras captured this, no headlines followed, but for her something shifted forever. As Keanu stood up and walked back toward the set, the assistant watched him go, realizing she had just witnessed a kind of heroism that made no sound at all. And she had no idea that this quiet moment was about to change far more than her own confidence. The assistant stayed where she was for a moment, breathing slowly, as if afraid that moving too fast might break whatever had just settled inside her. Around her, the set came back to life, voices rising, footsteps quick and impatient. Yet something felt different now. The fear that had wrapped itself around her chest had loosened, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of steadiness. She returned to her tasks with care, replaying his words in her mind. Thank you for being brave enough to try. No one had ever said that to her before. Not in this world where mistakes were remembered longer than effort. Across the set, Keanu slipped back into his role without drawing attention. He didn't glance back to see if his small act had mattered. To him, it was finished, just something that felt right in the moment. But not everyone missed it. A senior crew member had watched the exchange from a distance. At first, he had assumed Keanu was giving direction, maybe even correcting someone. When he realized the truth, something unsettled him. In an industry built on hierarchy and pressure, kindness like that felt almost disruptive. It challenged the unspoken rule that power was meant to be displayed, not shared. As the day wore on, tension crept into the shoot. A complex scene was falling apart. Tempers flared, voices sharpened. The same assistant was suddenly called forward, blamed for a delay she had not caused. Her confidence wavered and the old fear surged back, heavier this time because now she had something to lose. She opened her mouth to apologize, ready to shrink again. Before she could speak, a familiar, calm voice cut through the noise. Keanu stepped forward, not loudly, not angrily, but with a quiet certainty that made the entire set pause. And in that pause, everyone sensed that something important was about to happen. The set fell into a strange stillness, the kind that feels heavier than shouting. Keanu did not rush his words. He looked at the assistant first, really looked at her, and in that brief moment she felt seen again, anchored, as if someone had placed a steady hand on her back. Then he turned to the crew. He did not accuse. He did not defend himself. He simply spoke the truth, calmly and clearly. He explained what had actually caused the delay, naming the technical issue without pointing fingers. He acknowledged the pressure everyone was under, the long hours, the weight of expectation. His voice carried no edge, only honesty. What unsettled people was not what he said, but how he said it. There was no performance in him, no need to prove authority. His presence alone carried it. The assistant felt her knees weaken with relief. She hadn't realized how deeply she had been bracing for humiliation until it didn't come. Instead, she heard her own name spoken with respect. She watched as blame dissolved, replaced by an uncomfortable awareness among the crew. They had almost crushed someone who was already trying her best. The shoot resumed, but the energy had shifted. Conversations softened. Instructions became clearer. A few people even apologized quietly as they passed her. Keanu returned to his mark and the cameras rolled again. From the outside, everything looked normal. But inside the assistant, something permanent had changed. She no longer felt invisible. She felt responsible, not just for her job, but for carrying forward the calm that had been offered to her. Later that evening, as the lights dimmed and people began to leave, she noticed Keanu sitting alone, shoulders slumped, eyes distant. For the first time, she wondered what it cost him to always be this steady for others. And as she took a hesitant step toward him, unaware of what she might say, she sensed that behind his quiet strength was a weight few people ever asked him to share. The assistant hesitated only a moment before walking toward him. Every instinct told her not to interrupt, not to cross the invisible boundary that separated someone like her from someone like him. Yet something deeper pushed her forward. The same quiet courage he had shown her earlier was now asking to be returned. "Mr. Reeves," she said softly, stopping a few steps away. He looked up, surprised, then smiled in a way that carried no trace of distance or status. "You can call me Keanu," he said, voice gentle, almost tired. She nodded, suddenly aware of how loud her heartbeat felt. For a second, she considered retreating, but then she remembered the way he had knelt beside her without hesitation, how he had listened as if her fear mattered. She owed him honesty. "I just wanted to say thank you," she began. "Not just for earlier, for everything. You didn't have to do that." Keanu leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly, as if letting out a breath he had been holding all day. "I did," he said quietly. "I had to." That answer caught her off guard. She waited, unsure whether he would continue. For a moment he didn't. His gaze drifted past her, toward the empty set, the darkened lights, the scattered props that now felt like remnants of another world. "When you've been around long enough," he said finally, "you start to see patterns. You see how quickly people forget what it feels like to be small." She listened without interrupting, sensing that this was not something he often shared. "There was a time," he continued, "when I was the one standing quietly, hoping not to mess up. I remember what it feels like to be blamed for things you don't understand yet. I remember how heavy silence can be when no one steps in." His voice never wavered, but there was something raw beneath it, something held carefully in place. The assistant swallowed. She had always imagined strength as something loud, something visible. But sitting here with him, she realized strength could also look like this. Calm, honest, unprotected. "I don't think people realize how much that matters," she said. "What you did today, it changed the way everyone treated me." Keanu gave a small shake of his head. "I didn't change them," he replied. "I just slowed things down enough for them to see." The words stayed with her. As they sat there, the sounds of the set fading completely, she noticed how tired he looked now that he wasn't holding himself upright for others. The confidence was still there, but beneath it was a quiet weariness, the kind that comes from carrying more than one's share of weight for a long time. "You don't always have to be the one who steps in," she said carefully. "It must get exhausting." He smiled again, but this time there was sadness in it. "It does," he admitted, "but the alternative costs more." Before she could ask what he meant, footsteps approached from behind. A producer, clipboard tucked under his arm, slowed when he saw them together. His expression shifted, uncertain, almost guarded. "Keanu," the producer said, "we're reviewing footage tomorrow morning. There were some concerns raised today." The assistant felt her body tense. She could sense what was coming, the unspoken discomfort, the quiet pushback that often followed moments of humanity in places driven by control. Keanu stood smoothly, his posture relaxed but grounded. "I'll be there," he said. "What kind of concerns?" The producer hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Some people felt the set lost momentum earlier, that things were handled differently than usual." Keanu nodded unbothered. "That's true," he said. "They were." Silence stretched between them. The producer glanced at the assistant, then back at Keanu. "We just want to keep things efficient." "Efficiency without care isn't strength," Keanu replied evenly. "It's fear wearing a mask." The producer stiffened, clearly not expecting resistance, especially not delivered so calmly. He muttered something about schedules and walked away. The assistant watched, stunned. Keanu had not raised his voice. He had not challenged authority in any obvious way, yet he had drawn a line that could not be ignored. "You might get in trouble for that," she said. "Maybe," Keanu replied. "But if I don't speak when it matters, then all the quiet kindness before it means very little." They parted shortly after, the day finally complete. As she walked to her car, the assistant felt changed in ways she could not fully explain. She felt taller somehow, steadier. Not because she had gained confidence alone, but because she had witnessed what courage could look like when stripped of ego. That night she barely slept. Her mind replayed every moment, every word. She thought about the industry she was trying to survive in, the compromises she feared she would one day have to make. And she thought about Keanu, about how lonely it must be to hold a standard others quietly resist. The next morning, the meeting room was tense. Crew members filled the seats, some avoiding eye contact, others whispering behind their hands. The producer stood at the front, reviewing notes, while footage played silently on a screen. The assistant sat near the back, heart-pounding, feeling as though she had been pulled into something much larger than herself. Keanu entered last and took a seat without ceremony. The discussion began politely enough, but soon the tone shifted. Words like professional boundaries and workflow disruptions surfaced. Nothing was said outright, yet the implication hung thick in the air. Kindness was being reframed as a liability. The assistant felt her chest tighten. She wondered if this was the cost of what he had done, if stepping in for her had placed a target on his back. Then Keanu spoke. "I want to be clear," he said, voice calm but firm. "What happened yesterday was not a disruption, it was a correction." The room stilled. "We corrected a moment where pressure was turning into harm," he continued. "If that makes us uncomfortable, we should ask why." A few people shifted in their seats. Others stared at the table. "I've been in this industry long enough to know that fear moves fast," Keanu said. "It keeps people quiet, it keeps them compliant, but it also keeps them small." His eyes moved around the room, not accusing, just honest. "I won't be part of a process that forgets the human cost of efficiency." The producer cleared his throat. "No one is suggesting we forget that, but there are systems." "Systems should protect people," Keanu replied, "not silence them." The assistant felt tears sting her eyes, not because she felt weak, but because she was witnessing something rare. Someone with power choosing to use it gently, but without apology. The meeting ended without a clear resolution. No one argued with Keanu openly, yet no one fully agreed either. The tension lingered, unresolved, like a storm waiting to break. As people filed out, the assistant remained seated, unsure what to do next. She had come into this job hoping to survive. Now she felt as though she was being invited to choose something harder. Keanu paused beside her on his way out. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded, "I think so." He studied her for a moment. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "But you do owe yourself honesty. Don't let this place teach you to shrink." She swallowed and met his gaze. "I won't," she said, surprising herself with how certain she felt. As he walked away, she realized something unsettling and inspiring all at once. The courage she admired in him was not something meant to be watched from a distance. It was something meant to be carried forward. And she had no idea how soon she would be tested. The test came sooner than she expected. 2 days later, the assistant arrived on set before sunrise, the sky still dim and uncertain, matching the feeling in her chest. The meeting from the day before had left a quiet aftershock. Nothing had been resolved, yet everything felt altered. People spoke more carefully now, as if aware that something fragile had been exposed. She sensed it immediately. The politeness felt forced, the kindness selective. Keanu arrived shortly after, dressed simply, greeting people as he always did. But she noticed what others tried to hide. Some smiles didn't quite reach their eyes. Some conversations stopped when he walked past. Power had a way of tightening when it felt questioned. Midway through the morning, the producer called for an unscheduled pause. Crew members gathered, confused. The assistant stood near the edge, clipboard pressed against her chest, trying to steady her breathing. The producer cleared his throat. "We've decided to make a few adjustments going forward," he announced. "Some responsibilities will be redistributed to improve workflow." The words sounded neutral, but she felt the meaning before it was fully revealed. Her name was called. She was being reassigned, not promoted, not removed entirely, just shifted out of visibility, placed back into a quieter role where mistakes would matter less because no one would be paying attention anyway. A familiar heat rose behind her eyes. Not fear this time, something sharper, disappointment. She glanced instinctively toward Keanu, then stopped herself. This was the moment he had warned her about, the moment where honesty demanded action, not protection. She stepped forward. "I'd like to understand why," she said, voice steady despite the pounding in her ears. The producer looked surprised. "It's not a reflection of your performance," he replied quickly. "It's just a structural decision." "With respect," she said, "I've done my job well. Yesterday's issue wasn't caused by me, and this change feels like a consequence, not a structure." Silence rippled through the group. A few heads turned, others looked down. The producer's jaw tightened. "This isn't the time or place." "It is," she said quietly, "because if I stay silent now, I learn the wrong lesson." Keanu watched from a few steps back, his expression unreadable. He did not intervene. He didn't need to. This was her courage now. "I'm not asking for special treatment," she continued. "I'm asking for fairness. If kindness slows us down, then maybe we're moving too fast." The words echoed, borrowed yet fully her own. The producer hesitated, clearly weighing optics against control. Finally, he nodded curtly. "We'll discuss it later." The meeting dissolved without resolution. People drifted away, murmuring. Some offered her quiet looks of respect. Others avoided her entirely. She felt strangely calm. Later that afternoon, Keanu found her alone near the prop tables, organizing items no one had asked her to touch. "You didn't need to do that," he said gently. "I did," she replied. "You showed me what it looks like to speak without attacking. I wanted to try." He smiled, but there was pride in his eyes, mixed with something heavier. "That choice costs," he said. "Are you ready for that?" She nodded. "I think I always was, I just didn't know it." The cost came quickly. By the end of the day, rumors spread. She was difficult, too idealistic, not adaptable, words designed to make courage sound like a flaw. She went home exhausted, questioning herself for the first time. Alone in her small apartment, the weight of uncertainty pressed in. She wondered if she had misunderstood everything, if kindness really was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Thank you for today. You reminded me why I stayed in this job." Another followed. "I saw what you did. It mattered more than you know." Tears slid down her face, unexpected and unrestrained. Not because she felt validated, but because she realized she wasn't alone. The next morning, something subtle but undeniable had shifted. Crew members began backing her up quietly. Small corrections were made. Accountability returned in places where blame used to land. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, but real. Keanu noticed too. During a break, he stood beside her, watching the set move with a new rhythm. "This is how change actually happens," he said. "Not all at once, not cleanly." She smiled. "It's messier than the movies." "Yes," he said softly, "but more honest." That afternoon, the producer approached her again, this time without an audience. "I've reconsidered," he said stiffly. "Your role will remain unchanged, but I expect professionalism." She met his gaze. "So do I." He walked away without another word. As the day wrapped, Keanu prepared to leave early. A charity commitment, another quiet obligation few people would hear about. Before he left, he turned to her. "You won't always see the results of what you choose," he said, "but that doesn't mean they aren't real." She nodded, feeling the truth settle deep inside her. As his car disappeared down the street, She stood alone, realizing something profound. The heroism she had witnessed wasn't about saving the day. It was about refusing to let the world harden you into someone you don't recognize. And she sensed that the final lesson had yet to reveal itself. The final lesson arrived quietly, as most real endings do. Weeks passed and the set settled into a new normal, not a perfect one. There were still rushed days, still sharp tones when pressure mounted, but something had changed beneath the surface. People paused more often. They listened. They corrected themselves. The assistant noticed it most in the smallest moments, when someone asked instead of assumed, when blame stopped short and turned into problem solving. She stayed, not because the job had suddenly become easy, but because she had learned the difference between endurance and surrender. Keanu finished his work on the project without ceremony. On his last day, there were no speeches, no grand acknowledgments. He hugged a few crew members, thanked others by name, and left as he had arrived, quietly. Yet his absence felt larger than his presence ever had. After he was gone, the assistant faced her hardest choice. She was offered another position on a different project. Better pay, more visibility, but the environment was known for the same cruelty she had once accepted as normal. The offer sat heavy in her hands, tempting and uncomfortable. That night she walked through the empty studio lot, remembering the first day she had stood frozen by those cables. She thought about the cost of courage, the slow, invisible kind. She thought about what Keanu had said, that the alternative always costs more. The next morning, she declined the offer. Instead, she stayed where she was and began doing something even harder. She became the person who noticed. When a new intern panicked, she knelt beside them. When blame started circling, she asked better questions. When someone was ignored, she made space. She didn't announce herself. She didn't preach. She practiced. Months later, she was promoted, not because she demanded it, but because people trusted her. They felt safer around her, stronger. One afternoon, she received a letter, no return address. Inside was a simple note, handwritten. Quiet strength multiplies when it's passed on. Thank you for carrying it forward. She smiled, tears blurring the words. Years from now, she would tell this story to someone else standing on the edge of doubt. Not as a legend, not as a headline, but as proof that heroism does not need noise. It only needs courage, and the willingness to remain kind when it would be easier not to. And somewhere, unnoticed as always, that was enough.